Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really, really proud to be here. I'm proud to be part of TEDx and be here in Taipei. And it might seem that I'm really very far away from home, but I live and work in Shanghai, and I'm really part of this community. I've been in Asia for about 6 years, and before that, I lived in the US for about 20 years. But I come from a small town in southern Sweden, in Europe. And this town is called Malmö. And Malmö is a town that is almost 1,000 years old. It was originally kind of a village for the farming area. And then it became kind of a shipbuilding manufacturing town. And more recently, it's kind of transformed itself into a biotech city, into a university town, into a city that does consumer electronics, etc. It's very wealthy, very rich. And recently, I was back and visiting my family there and was out walking with my dad. And what I thought was really fascinating, as we were walking in the harbor, we come across this bridge. And you might say, wow, that bridge doesn't look like much. It doesn't seem like anything really special at all. But this bridge has been around for quite a while, and it's really part of the community. And as part of the community, the city has chosen not to tear it down. They have chosen to keep it. They have decided that this is part of the fabric of the life here and what helped build the success of this town. So if you look at the sign, and I actually thought this was really funny, we're walking along and the sign says, maximum 30 kilometers an hour, then the bridge will last. And if you know Swedes at all, you know that an exclamation point is a really big deal. So we're very, very demure, very quiet. So this was a big deal, right? And what they've chosen to do is to say, we're going to keep this, so please, please, please be careful. The relationship that we have with this bridge is much more important than replacing it and with something grand, something bigger. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about design. I want to talk about what you can do to create potentially better products. And what I am here to say is that rather than focus so much on shape and proportions and materiality, which I think is all like important things, really, really important, we should also think about the relationship that these products can build with the consumer, with the user, right? And I work on a lot of projects all over the world. Truly, like I said, I've lived in several places, but I also work in places like Africa and South America, for example. And what you realize is that everyone is asking for something new, something exciting, something special, and they basically want you to tweak. So if you think of like an equalizer, sorry, go back here, the equalizer is something that almost, like if you remember these from the 80s and from the 90s when you had the stereo, people want you to tweak little things, left and right. Say, okay, a little bit more of this, a little bit more of that. Then we get a design that is more new, it's a little bit more special, and it's maybe more culturally responsive to the area that we're trying to sell this product in. But to me, you end up feeling like, oh, I just made a small change. I haven't really done anything for this world. I haven't really taken responsibility. And whatever you do, if you come up with a small new idea, they say, oh, that's the new premium, that's what everyone wants to do, this is the stake in the ground, this is the cool new thing. And we can do things like this. We can adjust, right? So if you take different factors like design or heritage or brand and cost, we can say, okay, we're going to design something for North America. So exclusivity is more important, brand is important, design, heritage in the US, they don't really care maybe as much, so that's not so important. If we go to Europe, then you have design and heritage as something that is a driver. And then maybe perhaps in China, heritage, brand, and the Veblen good of cost, something that's more expensive is more desirable, that might become relevant, right? But what we find is whatever is the premium today, whatever we put that stake in the ground and said, okay, here's the flag, this now is the new cool. When we do that, we find that tomorrow, that's just a standard expectation. This is just a thing that we're expecting to have as our baseline tomorrow. And this picture actually shows the electric window. I think because I come from a car company, right? The electric window is so standard. You don't even think there's something else existed. But this was a new big deal at one point, and now it's such a standard, right? Another aspect is that there's real inconsistency within cultural perceptions of premium. So one culture might say, well, handmade, leather, stitched, a little bit uneven, is really, really nice because it shows that there was a person who actually made this. And in other cultures, you might say, nah, I don't actually like that. I want something that's machined and very precise and comes out of a factory because that is more difficult to get. So these inconsistencies create real problems. So like I said, I work for a car company, and what do? We sell what I think is like the most fun and exciting cars. They bring joy, they bring thrill. They're sexy. This is exciting. I wish I was there right now. I love being here, but I wish I was there doing this, right, and driving like this. It is really a thrill. But this is a challenge. This is not as easy to do anymore. And why is that? Well, there's lots of things that are happening in the world. One is the economic shifts, and we know about these mega cities, right? And the mega cities are good in many ways because this makes things much more efficient and works basically in a way where any of the infrastructure is used by more people in a better way. The problem that happens is that you can't really enjoy something like a BMW that actually has the ability to corner really well or anything like that. From a social perspective, young people are not that interested in cars anymore. So you find that people in Japan, younger people, are not even getting driver's licenses anymore. People even in the US, like in the Bay Area, are saying, this is really not what I want. I don't want to spend all my money and spend all my time on dealing with a car. From a tech point of view, there's new forms of interaction, of course. We know this. We're all on our phones, right? We're all interacting with our friends this way rather than traveling to see them. So you have a whole different criteria for how you actually see and meet friends now. From a product perspective, there's real convergence, and I have 3 different mobile phone companies here. I think what you find is that the products in themselves, the actual tactile piece of electronics is very similar between the companies. And that also means that there's real challenges in how you can actually express your own personal relationship to the consumer. The other thing is brands. Brands overall are very prevalent. They exist all over. But the other aspect of that is that they're somewhat distant. They're not really building a good relationship with the consumers. So I want to show you a little bit here. It's a funny part. I was in Hiroshima in Japan, and I'm walking along. It's dusk. The evening is coming around, and my wife and I are walking down some back streets, some alleys, and there's this beer distribution center. And we thought, that looks pretty dreary. That's not very fun. But funny enough, there was a long line of people standing at one end. And there was this little opening. You can see it in the picture here. And, of course, what do you do when you see a long line of people standing waiting at a place, right? We joined the line. So we stood in line as well. So we decided, we're going to see what this is. We're going to find out, right? So we stand in line. We wait, and we get up, right? And when you get up, you see this menu on this board here, this little sign here. And basically, it looks like somebody's serving you something, and then it says it's open from 5 to 7. So this is not the most customer-oriented place in general. And when we came inside, what we found was this guy named Shigetomi. And Shigetomi is actually selling beer. And what he's doing is he's providing the experience of tasting beer in different ways depending on how he pours it. So he has a tap from the 1930s, and he has a new tap from just recently, and he basically gives you a menu and says, I can pour it in 4 different ways for you. I asked him, so what's the beer that you're serving me? And he goes, that's not important. The beer doesn't matter. What is important is how I pour it for you, and I'm a master pourer. And that's what he does. He's basically taken the product and removed the product, and he's built an experience. And I can tell you, it tastes very different depending on how he actually pours it for you. And you know what? He's also wanting to share this so much that as soon as you've drank your, I think it was 2 or 3 beers you were allowed, then he says, thank you very much, you got to leave now because I have other people I'm gonna let experience this, right? And I thought that was beautiful because the product is gone, the experience, it's there, and it's all about that experience. And that's a little bit about this bridge too. The product, the item is not so important. The design of it is not so important. It fulfills its function, but it's really about that extraordinary relationship that it's building. And this is what I think we need to think about as we're designing products, buildings, cars, etc. Looking at the future of design, from my perspective, if we look at today's standard, it's really about something that meets expectations, right? That's what's good today. This is anything that meets expectations. And then if we look at today's premium, it goes beyond that, and it's something that meets your desires, right? It meets something like, oh, I want this. It feels really good. It feels really extra. But tomorrow's premium might be more about meeting unrecognized needs. It might be about that transformation that it does for you to get with the product, so how you interact with the product. And that, I think, is how we should look at things as we design, not only for the United States, North America, and Europe, but also for Asia, and specifically for China. So what we need to think about is not only the experience, but also the service, and then ultimately the relationship, right? And what's a relationship then? So then we got to consider, well, what do we have when we talk about a relationship? Well, a relationship is about the need to belong, right? So how can you build that relationship, and how can you say, okay, now I feel like I'm family, I'm part of this. This is, a relationship that I have as a close family members, for example. It's also about the social exchange. It's about the exchange of ideas. It's about belonging to something in the sense of saying, okay, I am learning things, I am gathering things, I am sharing things myself. And it's about the relational self. It's about deciding, okay, how do I fit into the picture of this society? How do I fit in? And perhaps products can help you do that. And I think like some of the examples from like Shigetomi, some of the things from the bridge here can actually illustrate that. What we do as part of the BMW group then to try to understand how can we design better products when we think about relationships, when we think about experiences overall, we go out and we do a lot of research. So we look and we observe and we participate in the communities. But we will look at things like, instead of maybe looking at shape, proportion, materiality, etc., we look at things like service. How is service different in different parts of the world? If we're going to design things that develop better relationships to us, to the consumers, to the buyers of our vehicles, etc., how can service be different? So if you look at different parts of the world, you would say maybe in North America, service is about enthusiasm, right? It's about making somebody feel very comfortable and say, okay, hi, how are you doing? How can I help you? In Europe, perhaps it's more about empathy. It's more like a butler. And perhaps in China, it's a little bit more about providing something fast at a great speed so that people can feel content that they received things when they were requesting them, right? Likewise, if you think about cultural values, in the United States, it's all about the individual, right? It's all about feeling good. I am number one. I'm best. That's the way that community thinks about itself. In Europe, it's more about thinking about the whole community, right? And in China, the focus is really more about the family. From a professional interaction point, just another example here, perhaps in North America, it's more about being equals. It's that buddy aspect again. In Europe, it's more about deference. Frau, Herrn, I work with a German company. It's very formal in that way. And in China, it's more about respect. So what I would like to say towards the end here is that when we look at design, when we look at success of design for products in the future, when we look at how do we design a product that is going to be better in China than it is today, I would say, we can talk about shapes, we can talk about materiality, we can talk about those proportions. We can say if we make these tweaks, it will be more appropriate for China. But what I'm venturing to say is that we should go beyond that. we should go into looking at how do we develop a better relationship, how are we more responsive, how are we building a community. And when you think about proportion next time, think about that, but maybe also think about commitment. When you think about materiality, you can consider that, but also think about how are you building a bond, right? And finally, I think I mentioned earlier, I am very, very lucky. My daughter was born last Tuesday, and I'm really blessed. Sorry. And so, but I really take this as a great responsibility. And I think that, when I'm looking at designing products for the future, I want to take into consideration how can we be better from a social point of view? How can we be better from a sustainability point of view? And how can we create things that in the future will really build a relationship with people? Thank you very much.